In a world where strength is literally dictated by a number, you'd think the higher one would always be better than the lower one. And while that is generally true for most cases, there's a number of other factors in DanMachi that need to be considered when talking about power. Things like skills, magic, and special abilities that, when used right, can make someone like Bel seem stronger than even Eyes. Since we're talking about the strongest adventurers in all of Aurario though, unfortunately Bel won't even be mentioned here. Yes, he does have the potential to be the strongest, but the focus of this video are the people who already are the strongest. Adventurers who we've seen at some point in the anime already. So, while that won't include the canonically confirmed strongest character Albert, we will still talk about the likes of Ottar, Aland, and Finn, as well as the other upper ranks of Aurario's strongest familias. I probably won't get to all of them here, but if you want to see more mini profiles on DanMachi's strongest, then be sure to leave a like and comment so I know for the future. But first, this video is sponsored by the Good Smile Company, specifically their free-to-play mobile anime RPG Grand Summoners. As a highly story-driven game with a lot of anime crossovers, you'll play as the Summoner Reyes to fight against numerous different demons and monsters, often recruiting some of your favorite characters to fight with and play as. So, with the current crossover being for Tensida, not only can you summon that oh-so-OP slime Rimuru, but you can also play as Milim, Benimaru, and Shion, all of which appear in-game and interact with Reyes to create this completely new original story. Plus, with the holidays having just passed, you'll get to see these characters in both their holiday skins and traditional Japanese ones. What I like the most myself though are the crazy abilities Rimuru and the others come with. Yes, you can equip them with unique activatable items, but their ultimates and skills tie to the anime perfectly. Which, if you want to see for yourself, all you gotta do is complete the event and you'll get a 5-star slime form Rimuru for free. So, if you want to check out this Tensida crossover, then be sure to download Grand Summoners today using the QR code on screen or the link in the description. You can also win some physical merch by heading to their Twitter and entering their promos. But now, let's get back to the video. Starting things off with the obvious, aside from the former captains of the Zeus and Hera Familia, Ottar is the only level 7 in all of Aurario, a force of nature whose stats dwarf even the strongest level 6. With everything maxed except for magic, I honestly can't stress enough just how impressive that is. I mean, achieving the S rank alone is extremely difficult, let alone doing it when it's exponentially harder in the higher levels. Add in the fact that he doesn't have an OP ability like Realis Freeze, and you gotta wonder how much hard work, time, and dedication Ottar needed to reach this level. Like, if Bel is the standard case of an OP character with a fast track to the top, then Ottar's character would be the exact opposite. He didn't have any special abilities accelerating his growth, or the outside factors working in his favor to ensure it happened. No. The only thing Ottar had going for him was a dedication to Freya and years of battle experience. At least a decade of fighting both other familia and monsters in the dungeon. So, to say Ottar's OP just because he's strong right now is actually an insult to all the hard work that he's been through. It's not something I'm going to talk about now, but I do feel you should know his strength stems from becoming the most battle-hardened warrior out there. So much so that if someone went and performed a feat more incredible than his own, then he himself would set out to do it as well. Now, in terms of what he has going for him, well, aside from the 7 years of stats he's accumulated since reaching level 7, it's only natural he also possessed several development abilities, the unique traits that have a chance of appearing whenever a level up occurs. So, just like how Bel gained Luck and Escape, Ottar too earned 5 of his own. 7 if you include the 2 which unlock while using his skills. It's out of those 5 though that only 2 are truly defined with how they operate. Hunter is an ability which makes Ottar stronger when fighting against monsters he's already fought before, specifically the ones he's defeated and gained Excelia from. It's not really that unique of an ability, but the way it's earned is by defeating a large number of monsters in a short period of time, all of which can only be done at level 2. Now, I'm not sure how potent these effects become at the E rank, but if the G rank for abnormal resistance makes you immune to pretty much everything, then I can only imagine how much more powerful 2 letter grades above that would be, which is actually the level of abnormal resistance he possesses right now. The novel does translate it as immunity, but that just means the negation of abnormal effects like poison. It essentially serves as a boost in defense to things like toxins or the elements. As for the other 3, well, magic defense is what you'd expect, and sturdy body is, I assume, an increased resistance to disruption type attacks, something that likely stems from having a frame as massive as he does. I'm not exactly sure what that final fracture ability does, but as a trait possessed by 3 others specializing in strength, I think it's safe to assume it comes from having immense physical power. Moving on to his skills, the first is the ability to beastify through Vana Argenture, which, if you're unfamiliar with what that means, it refers to a process unique to beast humans in which they can channel their inherently wild nature and turn it into power, usually by becoming significantly more violent. So, the way it works for Ottar is by first activating the skill through some sort of innate trigger, followed by a bestial transformation resulting in a dramatic increase to all his stats. It's a buff that many believe is powerful enough to push him to that level 8 rank, albeit temporarily of course. The main issue with a skill like this though is that all that power comes at the cost of his stamina and mind, both of which are drained heavily whenever the skill is active. With regards to his other skill now, this is a different temporary boost that buffs his development abilities, all while unlocking access to 2 more that normally wouldn't be available. So, in addition to a buff proportional to the user's status, Ottar also gains access to Heal and Spirit Heal, the first of which regenerates his health so long as he continues to fight, while the latter regenerates his mind slowly after having used magic. It's a rare ability that only a handful of others possess. Now, aside from his black sword, which was reforged from this to be one of the greatest weapons ever created, his true ability lies within his own power. While yes, he does possess all these skills, abilities, and even magic which I shouldn't talk about, all that are just accessories to the traits that really make him powerful. His incredible strength that can kill deep floor monsters with just the shockwaves from his normal attacks. His unfathomable durability which could take a direct hit from Eudeus without him even flinching. His insane speed and agility that can keep up with Alan and match even eyes, then his extreme endurance which enables perfect 5-minute recoveries, as well as endless stamina to keep pushing forward. It's enough to make solo runs to the deep levels completely doable for him. Combine that with power that scares even Asterius, along with experience that makes him quite the tactician, and what you get is an absolute monster unrivaled by anyone. And I'm just barely scratching the surface here. I could make an entire video talking about Ottar's strength alone, and I still don't think I'd be able to properly portray just how powerful he is. It's a topic I do plan on revisiting again. Now, when it comes to the adventurers below Ottar, it's hard to say who it is that comes in second. They're definitely from the selection of adventurers who have reached level 6, but to put any single person above the other is really a subjective matter due to their unique skill sets and abilities. Out of the 15 or so level 6s who have reached this threshold though, the overall strongest is probably Finn. But if we were to look from the perspective of something a bit more specific, then the position of next strongest would likely go to a different person. In any case, with Finn being the captain of the prominent Loki familia, it's only natural he be considered the strongest member of it. That may not be necessarily true, but his combined stats do amount to a sum greater than any of the other members. So, with a well-rounded build specializing in dexterity, Finn possesses both the speed and strength to take on a number of challenges. Like, he too is fast enough to keep up with Alan's movements, and his strength is great enough to take on Revis solo. What differentiates him from a large majority of other level 6s though is more than anything his years of experience fighting through things like the Great Feud in Arario's Dark Age. It was a time in which only the most battle-hardened warriors like Ottar would survive. So, with a past like that and over a decade of training, Finn's been able to build himself into the prom role model that he always wanted to be. He takes advantage of the small frame his race was given and combines it with his dexterity to evade and counter in ways no person would ever think of. Combine this with his mastery of the 1 or 2 spares he equips in combat, and what that leads to is a flurry of thrusts and sweeps that can easily throw his opponent off balance. It's an unrelenting sequence of attacks that makes countering extremely difficult, especially when Finn is always looking for ways to optimize every aspect of his performance. Regardless of whether it's direct combat or overseeing a battlefield, Finn is always thinking ahead to determine what's best. He can adapt very easily on the fly, all while quickly grasping the entirety of a complex situation. If something were to catch him by surprise, he wouldn't panic and fall into hysteria, but instead think rationally and figure out how to solve it. It's all part of what makes him the best strategist in Arario. A core aspect of his power that gets him there though is his intuition, which is said to surpass even the gods. You see, whenever something bad or unexpected is about to happen, Finn's thumb begins to throb beforehand, kind of like this early warning system that notifies him of threats before they happen. So, with a sort of innate trigger that acts like an OP spider sense, Finn can adapt way more easily than the average person. mainly because he's able to plan ahead for it. Now, the development abilities that complement his build are those same hunter and defense traits that Ottar possessed, along with a couple unique others of initiative and chain attack. Chain attack increases the power of attacks delivered one after the other, while initiative, although not explained, is likely a buff to the first attack made when in battle. That or some sort of passive enhancing his tactical prowess when trying to make the first move on something. Where that real powerful stuff starts coming into play though is through his magic and skills, which provide way more in terms of options in combat. There's his Prum Spirit, which boosts the effect of magic and skills when in a tough situation, his Noble Brave, which provides resistance to mental attacks, Al Mukmidna, which resists drowsiness and buffs endurance to fire, then Command Hal, which expands the reach of his voice when it goes beyond a certain threshold. The first three are pretty straightforward, but Command Hal provides greater control over a large-scale battlefield. Like, say his orders couldn't be heard over the sound of swords clashing and monsters shouting, then Finn could just use this to relay his orders over top of that. It didn't matter how massive the battle was, because the level at which his voice was boosted was actually proportional to the size of the battle taking place, making it so his voice could be heard no matter how hectic things got. Now, the last skill available at his disposal is Dia Fiana, which temporarily gives him access to the ability Spareman. Another passive that isn't really explained, but I think a safe assumption would be increased proficiency with a spear. Now, as for his magic, both can serve as a kind of trump card for him. One's an ultimate attack that can only be used once every 24 hours, while the other is a magic-based enhancement that buffs everything similar to how Ottar's beastification does. If we look at the ultimate attack first, this is a type of spear-throwing magic that is buffed by literally every aspect of his build. What I mean is that all the numbers that make up his levels, abilities, and attributes are taken as they are and added directly into his magic stats. It isn't explicitly stated what happens after, but I imagine a spear thrown with a boost like that would probably be the equivalent to something like Cuchulain's Noble Phantasm, which, if you're unaware, is an attack so powerful that it reverses the very laws of causality to ensure it always hits its target. So yeah, I'd like to imagine it's as strong as that. As for Hal Finnegas, this enhances all his abilities at the expense of his rational thought, reason being that the magic itself causes for an increase in bloodlust, resulting in this overwhelming desire to fight. The extent to which his abilities improve isn't exactly known, but back when he was level 5 it did bring him up to level 6. So as a magic that buffs everything but hinders rationality, it kind of acts as a beastification of his own. In fact, some have even commented on how it makes him the strongest adventurer alongside Ottar. Since that statement was made 7 years ago by a character who's now dead though, I can't quite comment on the validity of it now. Point is, if 7 years ago he was strong enough to be up there with Ottar, then I'm sure he's still close to being the next strongest today. Now, the last adventurer we're going to cover this video is actually a character whose strength is potentially limitless. Another demi-human with a couple of anger issues whose true power lies in a spell that can make him stronger than just about anyone. Before we get to that though, as an adventurer who only recently got to level 6, Bete's stats haven't really been updated since. If we look at what they were before though, we can see his specialty lies in agility, making him the fastest runner in the Loki familia. Of course, being one of the only level 6s, it's only natural he also possesses incredible strength and tremendous stamina, enough to be able to push through several injuries without tiring just a little bit. Combine that with a proficiency in combat that stems from early childhood warrior training, and it's that experience that would serve to help him level up so quickly. So despite Bete not being present during the Dark Age like Ottar and Finn, he still possessed an incredible sense for hunting which made him thrive in the dungeon, eventually leading to his position as captain in the Vidar familia. Now, just like every other beast human, Bete can beastify through his own unique skill known as Ulfedin, a skill that ties directly to his race as a werewolf, which, as you'd expect, means he can only activate it under moonlight. It's once that condition is met that Bete can then transform into a full-fledged werewolf and, as a result, gain a massive buff to all his abilities and attributes. It also neutralizes any abnormal statuses currently affecting him. Once again, the exact boost isn't known, but a level 5 Bete was able to use this and beat a level 6 boosted Fryn. So I imagine it's a similar scale to Ottar and Finn's buffs. When it comes to his other skills now, there's Fenris Wolf, which increases his running speed, then Solmani, which enhances his agility and strength whenever he's accelerating. As for his development ability passives, once again there's Hunter and Abnormal Resistance, but also the new ones of Pummel and Healing Power. both of which aren't specified with what they do, but I imagine Pummel is similar to Finn's chain attack, likely having to do with a combo of punch and kick-based attacks. The reason I say that is because Bete's fighting style consists mainly of powerful kicks. He does occasionally dabble with dual dagger-like swords, but his go-to moves are almost always the magic-empowered kicks enabled by Flosvir. As a piece of equipment that acts as an inferior substitute for his own magic, these mithril boots can absorb magical energy to increase his own power. They're actually the only superior grade weapon capable of doing that. Now, if you're wondering why he chooses to use this over his own magic, well, that's because the spell reminds him of his traumatic past. He refuses to use it due to the tragedies it forces him to remember. Even with it being the most powerful tool in his arsenal, he simply won't use it due to the pain being so unbearable for him. Thus the reason his magic remains unchanged at I0. If he was to ever activate this spell though, then Bete's power could very possibly increase infinitely. You see, the way it works is kinda like how his boots work. It absorbs magic and turns it into power. Both his fists and feet become surrounded by magically enchanted fire, then any magic those flames come into contact with are dissolved and absorbed. It doesn't matter whether it's a fireball or protective barrier because any and all magic is susceptible to being absorbed by it. It's a rare property commonly referred to as magic drain. Then, in a similar vein as that, its second property called damage drain also lets the spell absorb Bete's damage as well. So, with these flames consuming both damage and magical energy, it then recycles it and turns it into power. Not only by strengthening the flames emanating from his limbs, but also by starting this potentially infinite feedback loop. What I mean is that when Hati starts to become more powerful, the flames become so strong that Bete himself starts to take damage from them. But with the spell absorbing damage and turning it into more power, those flames would just continue to feed off that very same damage it's causing, resulting in this endless cycle of damage to power in which there is no upper limit to how powerful it can become. So, in a world where Bete's capable of withstanding these flames forever, his power could theoretically grow infinitely, thus giving him the potential to become the strongest. Because he doesn't ever use it though, we don't actually know how far he can possibly take it, leaving us questioning how powerful he truly could be. But yeah, that's a short glimpse into a few of the profiles of Arario's strongest adventurers. If you want to see more, then be sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments. Feel free to check out my Season 4 cut content in the meantime though. We also stream every Sunday talking about the most recent episode. Until then, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!